continuing our class on white, the treatise on white magic. Janet, have you been familiar with Alice A. Bailey teachings at all before you joined the group?
Nope, but I'm learning more now.
Okay, a lot of heavy-duty material here.
It's been great. It's resonating well with me.
Yeah, oh, good. Okay, we'll continue here on Rule 10. And he talks about the different yogas that were taught in the past. He says in the Lemurian times, there was, they taught what they called Hatha Yoga, which is a yoga which is the standard yoga that's out there now, where you do the different postures. And the idea behind this was to get control of the physical body. Okay, so this Hatha Yoga back in Lemurian times, many millions of years ago, was they put the attention on the disciples mastering the body. And they did this with all kinds of exercises, and even to the point to where they could like slow down the heart or speed it up or a bunch of different things like this. And until the highest disciples were able to completely control the body. And then in the times of Atlantis, people had progressed up from the physical to the emotional astral consciousness. So in Atlantis was a very astral civilization. And the type of yoga they practiced there was called Bhakti Yoga, and it was around centered around the astral body, and kind of the Masonic ordinances are kind of an extension of this type of yoga. Now in Aryan times, the emphasis is on Raja Yoga, yoga of the mind, controlling the mind, learning to quiet the mind down, controlling the mind. And then the next yoga of the future will be called Agni Yoga, the yoga of the spirit, where you learn to master soul contact and be able to contact the higher planes. And the immediate thing that civilization has to learn is what is called synthesis. Okay, we need to define what synthesis is. Who has a good definition? Somebody want to come forward?
I'll take a shot at it if nobody wants to.
Okay, Joshua.
So it's two seemingly differing or opposing forces able to be united or welded together into one force or one direction.
Okay, that's a good angle on it. Any other comments on what synthesis is?
I would like to add, it doesn't have to be opposing. It can be just different types of energy melded to become a new one, something like that.
Now, a common use of the word is synthetic products. What's a synthetic product? Like a synthetic fabric that your shirt might be made of? Why is it called a synthetic?
Because
synthetic is like synthetic rubber. It's something made to have the same properties of the original.
I was going to say that it's man-made rather than occurring naturally.
Yeah. So what synthesis is basically is taking diverse ingredients and putting them together into something that is a creation that works different, but has a different purpose, but works as the combination is all put together. It creates something that works better than the individual parts, so to speak. So when you make a synthetic product, you take several different ingredients, put them together, and you make a product that's different than the ingredients individually, but they all work together to make something usable, more usable than they are in a separate condition.
It's a blending.
Yeah.
Salt is a synthesis. Salt is a synthesis of sodium and chlorine, which is not the properties of either one, but it's a synthesis.
Right. And this is something really stressed by DK, is that we need synthesis of the groups, for instance, that there's all kinds of spiritual groups in the world, and they're all working on their individual things, and they need to synthesize more and come together and do things together in a synthetic way, meaning that they're able to keep their identity yet join forces so that they're able to accomplish something together more than they can just by themselves.
The word synthesis to me breaks down to synchronized thinking.
Yeah, that's part of it. That's
The actual
word has pretty-
definition that I got,
What's that?
I said the actual definition, I kind of cheated and looked it up. And it says
Oh,
the
you just looked it up?
yeah, the combination of ideas to form a theory or system. I really like that because I think that's where we're going with
Yeah,
that.
that's a good definition. Yeah. Okay. What do you suppose keeps a person from becoming participating in synthesis? How come we don't see more of it happening? What do you think, Curtis?
Well, people have their separate ideas. They create a thought form around. They're not willing to blend because they think their way may be better or superior, or they're just not, their consciousness hasn't opened to a place where they see outside of their own little construct. They can't see the big picture.
Right. And he points out people have an uncoordinated personality. They need to synthesize their own personality too before they can be synthetic. The personality involves your physical life, your emotional life, your mental life, and your spiritual life. They all have to be put together, and people tend to put emphasis on one of these and not work from a state of wholeness. And it's interesting how the word wholeness, spelled WHOLENESS, sounds so similar to the word holiness, like we think of God as being holy. So true holiness is being whole. So it's interesting how words are full of meaning by the way they sound. Okay. The second problem with interfering with synthesis is a sense of separateness and of distinction, he says. So people feel that they need to stand out and be totally separate from everybody else. And another is a possession of a creed. People latch onto some type of creed that and dogma that they just can't let loose of. And another problem, he says, is pride and ambition. And so he says, how does one qualify to be a true synthesizer? says there's three main things. He says the first is learn to practice harmlessness. Second is desire nothing for the separated self. And thirdly, look for the sign of divinity in everything. It says it's very simple rules, but hard to accomplish. Now, Curtis and I, when we were working together, teaching different classes and things, we approached different organizations, and they were not very interested in synthesis. So we were brainstorming one night, and we thought, well, you know what? There's a lot of alternative spiritual groups out there, and a lot of alternative spiritual people, yet, and they all believe in unity and a lot more than, say, the regular Christian churches, yet even though they express this belief, they're still not very united. Everybody's following their own way. And so we brainstormed together and wrote the 12 principles of synthesis, because because we felt that there needed to be something written up that tells us how we're united more than we're not united. In other words, there are certain things that the alternative spiritual people have in common. And this we need to put emphasis on more than what separates us. And you want to read the first one there, Curtis?
Yeah, I think I posted these last week on your website there. The first one, we seek not to be separative and isolated, but to unite and join hands with all spiritually minded groups and individuals who desire to bring peace on earth and goodwill to all mankind.
Oh, you must have rewritten this, because I have I have a different one for the first one.
Well, I might have changed the order.
I think that's one of them, but I think it's a little bit different order. Okay.
It could be. Read your
Yeah.
first one.
Yeah, I think let's go by mine to avoid confusion here. We believe in the equality of men and women, equal rights of each race, and the sacredness of all life. Now, this is something that just about everybody believes in, but it's something that the alternative spiritual people definitely should embrace, because but one of the problems that we have in the political world today is people accuse anyone that doesn't believe them the way they do as being racist or bigoted or whatever. And this accusation, looking for the differences, needs to be changed into looking for what brings us together. And most people are pretty good these days. We made a lot of progress. I mean, when I was a kid, it was back in the 50s, people were a lot more racist than they are today. And there was a lot bigger problems, but we made a lot of progress. We need to emphasize the progress. Okay. Yeah, I think, I'm not sure which number I think you must have changed the order there, Curtis. So anyway, I'll go on.
Yeah, I like to start off with not being separative and isolated, kind of as the opening line.
That's not a bad idea.
Want me to read? I'll read the second one I've got. We believe in the principle of free agency, and that there is a power within that enables us to accomplish many great and important things pertaining to this golden age of enlightenment.
Okay.
So we're all free agents with power to do it.
Okay. Yeah, you just changed the order around somewhat. He's talked a lot about this since we've originally wrote them together.
It's been a while.
Free agency. Does some people have a problem with free agency, do you think?
A lot of people have a problem with free agents.
Yeah, it's amazing. I saw a survey among college students. I think 43%, if I remember right, of college students believe free speech does not pertain to speech that makes you feel bad. So if you say something that insults somebody, they think that a lot of, I think it was something like 43% of college students think should be pretty much illegal to do that. And but that's not the way the founders thought at all. They thought they wrote the First Amendment to give us free speech so that we could have the freedom to say whatever we feel like, even if it hurts somebody's feelings. You can get on, go in the center of town or outside the White House and talk about how you disagree with the President of the United States and no one's going to come arrest you. But try to do that in North Korea and you'll be taken away within minutes.
Does this have to do, years ago, you had a website where somebody put up a website for principles of unification. And they had a list of, and if you believed all these things, regardless of your religion, you could sign that and you get, I think I was number 81 or something at one time.
Yeah, we still have that. We haven't publicized it much lately. Matter of fact, that's next to talk about after this. Okay, Curtis, you want to read number 3 on your list?
Number 3 on my list is we believe in the principle of harmlessness, for when we harm another person, we only harm ourselves. We shall not inhibit, restrain, or oppress the free will or privilege of any individual to explore new concepts or philosophies.
Okay, this is a core teaching for DK, is this principle of harmlessness. And the alternative spiritual people and the ancient wisdom puts a lot of attention on this. And this is something we should be able to all come together on. And, but what's interesting about these is these are principles that everybody can, in the alternative, new age, ancient wisdom, theosophical movements can all embrace. And this is something I don't think anyone would argue with this principle. Okay, Curtis, the next one.
We believe in the equal value of men and women, the equal rights of each race, and the sacredness of all life.
Oh, okay, yeah, that was my number one. Number one when
Oh,
we
okay,
first
all right.
Okay. Okay.
Here's the next one.
Yeah, we
believe
already
that-
talked about that one. Okay, go on to the next one then.
Yeah, we believe that we have the capacity to see eye to eye with each other by applying the principles of non-deception and open communication.
Okay, you know, that the question behind that, I think most everyone would outwardly say they agree with this, but the question is, do people really accept this idea that they can be one and see eye to eye? What do you think about that, Curtis?
Well, I think they may think that, but being non-deceptive and openly communicating are probably two of the hardest principles to really apply. I mean, how many secrets do we hold on to? How many times do we get an impression that we should say something that we don't? And if we had said it, it may have hurt someone's feelings, but it may have brought forth a greater measure of harmony if we had spoken what we felt.
Yeah, the problem with this deception is if people are not honest with their emotions, and so they may have hurt feelings but don't want to cause a problem, so they kind of act like, you know, everything's cool, and it may not be cool at all. But
Yeah.
yeah, this is the most difficult one. Almost everybody will think that it sounds like a good idea, but this is the most difficult principle of synthesis, perhaps.
The hardest part is to reveal the truth.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
the hardest. And yet it's
Okay.
the most, it gives you the greatest joy when you do, the greatest feeling, the greatest sensation when you reveal it.
Okay, if anyone has any comment before we move on to the next one, let us know there. Oh, Rick raised his hand. Rick, you got a comment?
It just occurred to me that when you're synthesizing with others, if you're in a meeting like this and you say something about somebody that's not present, he's probably best friends with about 5 or 6 of the other ones right next to you. It's like, so it's a 24-hour a day thing. You've got to always be in synthesis and never be saying something that goes against somebody just because he's not in the room at that minute, kind of thing. You have to always be aware.
Yeah, yeah, okay. Okay, Curtis, want to go on the next one?
Yeah, let's see. We accept the responsibility of maintaining our bodies, emotions, and minds in a state of maximum health and vitality. We seek not to hurt, but to heal.
Yeah, this is one that the alternative spiritual people seem to put a lot more attention on staying healthy, taking good care of their bodies and minds than the average person. When you visit, for instance, a health food store or something, the people that's in there just, a lot of them are into metaphysics or Eastern religion, or if they're Christians, or a little bit different type of Christians, a lot of them more of a searcher. And okay, have you noticed that about kind of the people interested in alternative spiritual things? Let me see, who shall we pick on? Stacy, what do you think about that? Have you noticed that with fellow travelers on the road, that they're interested in health?
Yeah, there's been quite a bit of wakening up about keeping the body and the mind and the spirit healthy. And basically what I see is the ones who weren't really following deeply in the esoteric path, at least they're concentrating on the body and keeping the body healthy. If the body isn't healthy, it's hard to follow a spiritual path, because you always have these little things that are going wrong with you and things that are taking your attention away. But if I had to say something that's good, well, not just one thing, but the new generation, they're coming about and they're concentrating on physical health. Well, and that's good, because eventually, and it's coming about, the spiritual acknowledgement is opening up. So whenever they get into that realm where they'll start settling down, they'll have healthy bodies. So that's a good sign. But
Yeah.
in a bad sense, is they're getting too far.
Yeah, I think this is a good principle of synthesis, because most New Age alternative spiritual people, almost every one of them is interested in health. So that's really a good thing to bring us together. Okay, Curtis, go on the next one.
Right, here's another one that'll bring us closer. We believe in the principle of service, where when we serve another, we serve ourselves. We retain only that which we have given away.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a good principle for everybody, but service is something that alternative spiritual people, New Age people, theosophical people, they all put a lot of emphasis on. But the trick is to really focus on service as for the whole rather than just service for self. And a lot of people are just interested in kind of alternative principles if it helps them to get ahead. But it has to be more than that. It has to be with the idea of being part of the whole and being of service to something greater than yourself. And everybody accepts this in theory in the New Age community, but it's something we need to put in practice. Okay, any more comment or questions on that one?
Yeah, I read something once that struck me as true, and that is, no one is ever remembered for what they acquire, but for what they give away. And
Yeah.
you know, you remember somebody helped you or gave you $20 when you needed it, or a hand when you needed it. You remember that. You don't remember people bragging about how good they did or what they accomplished or what they acquired. You don't, you know, that it doesn't stay with you. But when people give you something of themselves or maybe sacrifice something for you, you remember that.
Like Andrew Carnegie is widely remembered for giving away a lot of money to create libraries all across the United States. And he's remembered for that more than just having all kinds of real estate.
In my recent attempts to find a worldwide manufacturer of my invention, I kind of use that. I tell them, look, guys, this is my gift to the world. Can you make it a little bit more affordable for me to pay for this gift to the whole world, please?
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
I still remember when you gave me that $1 for my birthday when I was like 6. And that was, and I had no money, and that was a big deal. I hold a silver dollar. Wow. I still remember that.
Yeah, yeah. I remember my dad and my uncle went together and bought me a telescope when I was in high school, and I had always wanted a powerful telescope, and I was so thrilled. And I appreciated that throughout my entire life.
JJ's first gift to me was a whoopee cushion.
Oh, really?
At the gathering.
Oh, that was Artie's idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, she comes up with these unusual ideas for gifts at the gathering. Yeah. But you never know what she's going to come up with next. Okay. Go ahead, Curtis.
Okay, we are initiating a new age of peace, prosperity, and spiritual attainment through the intelligent application of love, knowledge, power, and wisdom.
Okay. You think pretty much everybody would agree with that, wouldn't they?
New Agers would.
Yeah. We're trying to do that anyway. Okay, what number was that?
That was 8.
Okay.
Here's one. We accept the principle of revelation for ages past, present, and future, and that there are numerous inspired writings in addition to the Bible that have been communicated by higher intelligence.
And that's an interesting one because, like, the Mormons make a big deal about the fact that they believe in modern revelation. They say they call it modern revelation, and the fact that Joseph Smith received a bunch of stuff in addition to the Bible, whereas the regular Christians, they say just accept the Bible and thought that God closed the heavens after the apostles died. Yet after Joseph Smith died, they didn't. The heavens have been pretty much close to them. They haven't had any new revelation either. So they're in a situation like that. Now, on the other hand, does the same thing happen in the New Age communities? Like, take Theosophy, we had all these new teachings through Madame Blavatsky and the original founders of Theosophy. Then Alice A. Bailey comes along with what I consider to be even higher writings. And what do the Theosophists do? How did they respond to Alice A. Bailey's material? Ed, do you know that?
Well, we know that there are many of them, even on the websites here in Facebook, that try to say that she's illegitimate, it's destroying theosophy and all this kind of thing, because the partisanship of people who want to hold on to their favorite group of people gets in the way. And how many people from Alice Bailey's group are willing to listen to and study the teachings of Lucille Cederkrans without some negative thoughts?
Right, that's a really good point. That's a really good point. The Theosophists reject Alice A. Bailey, but then you present something new to the Alice A. Bailey students, and a lot of them will reject anything that's not sanctioned by the writings of Alice A. Bailey. So,
do a lot of them reject Lucille Cederkranz's stuff?
Well, there are some. There are some that, like Michael Robbins, for example, says that, well, we haven't learned to incorporate everything that Alice Bailey said. Now, why should we consider something else?
Really? He says that? That's surprising. Yeah. So, yeah, this is the trouble. I've gone on a number of ancient wisdom sites, Alice A. Bailey sites, and if you say anything that's a little bit different slant than Alice A. Bailey had on it, well, you pretty much get thrown off. So, like,
well, you can find just about any. You can find just about anything to support your ideas from Alice Bailey in the
right,
blue books.
Like the teachings I have on the molecular relationship, if I were to go on any of these Theosophical or Alice A. Bailey sites and tell them about it, they'd probably think I was out to lunch somehow, even though the molecular relationship is supported by the teachings of Alice A. Bailey. Okay, so that's interesting. This is a difficult one. This is something that just about everybody agrees with, like the Theosophical Society, the Alice A. Bailey people, the I Am movement, all these guys, except, yeah, we're open to all kinds of revelation. But then when a revelation comes, they say, "Whoa, that's not in the program." So,
I think it all relates to that basic human fear is the fear of the unknown, isn't it? Because I don't know it, I don't understand it, it has to be wrong somehow. But the basic teachings, the tenet of the Theosophical Society is that there is no religion higher than the truth. And the truth should always be the thing that we seek.
yeah, that's a really great slogan they have, and it sounds good, but difficult to apply. My personal attitude is I have all kinds of people approaching me with different materials. Some of them are really out there about space people and all kinds of things. But when they do, no matter how ridiculous it sounds, I always check it out, because you never know where you might find some interesting new ideas or principles, or maybe something that's an actual revelation from the masters. Because once a true revelation is given out, there's no big sign up in the sky telling us, hey, God has spoken again, or the masters have spoken, or the Christ has spoken, or inspiration has hit. We have to dig it out. And so I look at everything, and you know, about 90% of what I look at is pretty much just rehashed stuff. But every once in a while, you come across something interesting, and helps keep your mind greased and open. But I try to stay open to everything, no matter how ridiculous it is. I go back to when I was on my mission, I heard what I thought was the most ridiculous thing that I'd ever heard. This lady told me about how applying pressure to different places in the foot can help with healing. And I thought that was the craziest thing I'd ever heard of. But then I had it in the back of my mind, and I found a book on reflexology and started studying, and I found, boy, this really works. So that kind of opened my mind to be, even though something sounds crazy, be open to the possibility that there might be something to it.
Well, that's one thing about you, Joe. You've always been open. I remember when I first saw your place in New Plymouth, I walked in, and against the wall, you had books stacked this high, filling the whole wall. I said, when are you going to read all those books? He said, oh, I've read most of them, at least once. And then your ability to stay open took you to, somebody mentioned Stell Group, The Ultimate Frontier, the Aquarian Gospel, which had a strong impact on me, Life and Teachings of the Masters of the Far East, you found those, and the Book of Onias, I don't know what you were looking for in the library, but you stumbled across that. How many people would have stumbled across all these different books that had such a powerful, profound impact on not only your life, but mine and half the people here in this group?
Yeah, I've always read oddball stuff, even when I was Orthodox Mormon. And I'd have sometimes, like, the home teachers would come and look at my library and really wonder what kind of character I was, because my library didn't have standard Mormon materials. Had some Mormon materials, but most of it was kind of unusual stuff.
Unorthodox.
Yeah.
Come over and look at my library, and I think I can give you some surprises.
I'm going to come check your library out, Ed.
Yeah, that would be. You can tell a lot about a person by looking at the books they have in their libraries.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
here's one.
Move ahead to the next one.
We disclaim all totalitarian and secular controls over our lives and affirm the power of the people to enjoy a free democratic society. We support the natural order of hierarchy with leaders selected and replaced by democratic principles. Again,
that's one that everybody says, yeah, that sounds good, but do they really believe it? How many spiritual organizations practice that in their own group? Instead, we have many cults in the alternative spiritual movement where you have a supreme leader who passes down the dictates and no one can challenge him. Then you have others that are fairly open to new ideas. So we have a big, wide variety, but one thing they all have in common, they all claim to support this principle. So,
until they're challenged.
Yeah. At least they'll claim to support it. Okay,
we have two more here. We promote world peace through the eradication of nuclear weapons, international aggression, and by putting an end to world hunger and poverty.
Yeah, I think I can't think of any New Age group that would be against that.
No.
And yeah, we all want to eradicate nuclear weapons. Only the trouble is, everybody wants to have nuclear weapons for their own protection, so to speak, and their own power. So that's a big one right there. If we could just
eradicate all nuclear weapons but ours.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, that's the reason I've written Project Peace and Goodwill as a plan to eliminate nuclear weapons, but we don't have time to go into that. If you haven't read it, it would be an interesting read for you. Anyway, this is something that everybody gives vocal support to, but we need more actual support and action. Rick.
Pretty funny, Rick. That's some new age humor for you.
Okay, well, we got one left, Curtis?
We got one left here. I put this one at the end. Kind of sums it all up. We acknowledge the universal God consciousness as the single creative force manifesting through time and space, and recognize the power of God flowing through each one of us. We affirm that love is the greatest unifying power and send only the pure love of Christ to all.
Okay. Now, who in the world could argue with that one?
Don't know. Somebody would.
Many will.
Well, that's, yeah, actually, to think of divinity flowing through us is something that sets the New Age groups apart from standard religious people. They see that
That we're evil.
the spirit of God, so to speak, but they don't see divinity in us the way that it's taught in the ancient wisdom and various New Age groups. And that's an important principle, but it's also taught in the Bible. I've written a book called The Gods of the Bible, which proves that the ancient prophets actually believed in this idea of God and man and God, so to speak.
Yeah, well, the organized basic Christian religions, those that we debated, would claim that we're all dirty rags and filled with the original sin, and God is outside of ourselves and only in Jesus, and that it has no place within us. So they would be the first probably to be challenged by that whole thought.
Yeah. Well, if we as a group ever get in a greater position of power, these would be really good principles to promote to the alternative religions, to try to get them more unified and under one banner. Because right now there's hundreds of different movements with hundreds of different ideas, but these 12 principles of synthesis are something that everybody can gather under one banner. And the Tibetan points out that goodwill is a principle, and that's extremely important, and that he was looking forward to our age, and he was hoping that the various groups would unite under the promotion of goodwill, peace on earth to men and women, and that it would be permeating society much more than it is today. So I think he's probably a little bit disappointed. I imagine the masters are happy that certain things have happened, maybe they didn't anticipate, but others, things they did anticipate, maybe haven't moved ahead as much as they wanted. I think the internet has provided opportunities that I don't know if anyone foresaw all the opportunities that's now available on the internet. So we have a lot of opportunities to synthesize that we never had in the past, but we need to take full advantage of what we have and prevent the great potential holocaust that could await us if the wrong decisions are made. So focus on the positive, and energy follows thought. If those that are interested in the spiritual side focus on the right direction, it will do a lot to take us into the great new age that we all anticipate. Okay, any comments or questions before we wrap it up?
I'm going to save that quote for later about the great potential Holocaust that you've been predicting.
Okay, thanks.
I'll send it over to Alex Jones.
Yeah, we want to avoid that, that's for sure.
I was going to say, use these as a tool, print them out, and in your conversations with people, you might say, hey, we're starting something kind of wild and crazy. I said, hey, we're starting a new molecular order, and people say, well, what's that about? And I say, it's just a bunch of people that get together that want to improve their quality of life and make a better world. And these are some of the things they believe. You know, so you have a tool, something to offer them, put your phone number on it. It's a very effective tool that way, a missionary tool.
Yeah. Okay. Rick, do you have a closing comment?
You did mention earlier that you were going to say some more about the website, the commitment to principle of unity, was it?
Yeah, we'll talk about that next week. We'll go into the principles of unification next week. Okay.
Husband, jump in.
What's that?
I was telling Asfet to jump in. He had his hand raised. He's been wanting to ask a question.
Okay.
Janet also has her
Yes,
hand.
yes, I had it many times. I
Okay,
was-
sorry, I don't see all the hands going up, okay?
okay. My question is regarding the principle of synthesis to include atheists. Is there a possibility? Because I think atheists, some of the atheists are much more advanced than Orthodox religious. So something is needed there, I think.
Okay, what's more advanced than,
Atheists.
spell
Atheists.
that?
What?
Spell that.
Atheist.
Atheists. Yes.
Atheism? Oh, okay. Yeah, well, people go through phases. They go through regular religion and they get frustrated over a series of lives. And when they get frustrated, they often turn to atheism. And many of the atheists are more advanced on the path than the regular religious people are. But then eventually, the mind slays the real for the atheist, and so he reaches a dead end, and so he eventually begins to think there's got to be something more. So he rediscovers God or a higher intelligence. And so we go through these phases where we are very religious without even thinking about it. Then after they think about it, they turn non-religious, and then they come back on a higher level later on. I don't know that's where you're headed there, but
My question was regarding a person who is on this stage of atheism.
yeah.
Can it be joined in the principle of synthesis? Because you mentioned God in Christ, and it doesn't go well with the atheism. So
Yeah, a lot of atheists can support a good portion of the principles of synthesis. And matter of fact, a lot of atheists point out that brag about the fact that, you know, we help more people and are more good natured and more into service than a lot of the believers are, is what a lot of them claim. And so even the hardcore atheists like to be seen as good people, and they're willing to cooperate. And a lot of people that are agnostic are actually very. Some of them are actually quite spiritual. They just acknowledge they just don't know the answers.
Well, they're centered in the lower concrete mind, not
Yeah.
at least they're out of the emotional mind. They're not
Yeah.
quite into the higher abstract, inspirational and intuitive mind, but they're centered in the lower concrete mind.
And
Yeah,
then there's the dyslexic atheist that doesn't believe in a dog.
yeah. Right.
Doesn't
Right.
believe in that.
Good one, Ed.
Okay, any other comments or questions before we sign off?
Janet has something.
Oh, okay, Janet.
I just wanted to say when you were talking about churches and religions and such that are like have their own way. The thing about which is really cool is that we surround us with like-minded people that are like us, that are believe in peace, love, service is a huge one, but thought into action. Those are all the things that David does teach us through our church and spiritual groups. So I feel like that's why I'm here, is because of what we
Yeah.
have been taught in for all of these years, that like he's planted us the seeds to be here with this group right now. So
Right, you're a good example of synthesis. You go to alternative spiritual church, yet you're open enough to check out something else like us, you know.
well, that's the whole
And,
thing.
and so you're not thinking this is all I need, you know.
No.
You're looking at what's out there, you know, and that's a synthesis that we need among people.
We don't want to put a limitation on ourselves. That's the way we felt. We know there's more, so we're exploring more.
And I think that's like one of the good things about it, because I was having an issue of like, okay, could I, two teachers, you know, David's the teacher to us. That's the way we look at him. And then we have this group and you, and I'm like, and I feel like it meshes properly. It feels completely right. And you kind of, Katie talked to him a little bit about it, and it was really cool because he's like, go with it. If it resonates with you, then awesome. If it doesn't, that means it's not for now. But so it was like, he's not like saying, don't you do that or anything like that. He's like, you know, hey, there's a lot more out there that I would love to just tell everybody, but their minds aren't ready for it right now.
Right, and there's people that are members of the Keys group that we teach on, that are members also of regular religions, that are just keeping an open mind, and so there are people like that, which is hopefully they eventually become more immersed in higher things. But okay, any other comments? Any other comments before we sign off? Well, thanks for going over those principles of synthesis for us, Curtis.
You're welcome, Joe, and thanks for letting me. It was a pleasure writing those with you.
Yeah, and I know you've done a lot of thinking. The order that you put them in sounds good. I don't see any problem with it. Okay, we'll look forward to seeing you next week. I guess I will plan next week at 2:00. And it's the day before full moon World Invocation Day, I believe it is. And so we'll do a special meditation dedicated to that. The next full moon is on next Monday at, I think, somewhere around 2 in the morning, Mountain Daylight Time. So we will see you next week.
Light and love all.
Long, everybody.
Life, light, and love, everybody.